Hello, Tom Maguire. I'm just going to review the book Build by Tony Fadell. So the full title of this book is Build, an unorthodox guide to making things worth making. And so what I want to do in this review is, first of all, I'm just going to give you a quick little bit of information about who Tony Fadell is, if you haven't heard of him before. Then I will tell you the good bits that I found from this book from a kind of personal development point of view, which is what this channel is about. And then I will go on to sort of tell you about the bits that I didn't like quite so much a bit later on. So stick around for that if you want to. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'd really appreciate it. It's really nice to see those numbers slowly creeping up. And, I intend to have, at least a book review a week. I've been doing that for a few years now. I started this channel to kind of improve my ability to talk about and think about the stuff that I read and enjoy, but also to leave book reviews to my kids so that they can look at me in years to come and kind of get a bit of an insight into the books that I read and enjoyed and the things that kind of shaped me. And also so they can kind of laugh at me trying to be a YouTuber as well. So please feel free to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, hang around for this review of this book. It's a worthwhile one. So from a personal development point of view, I will give you my opinion. So a quick bit about Tony Fadell. So he was instrumental in the development of the iPod and the iPhone at Apple. And then he went on to co-found Nest Labs, which basically started the consumer market around thermostats, smart thermostats, which might sound a little bit boring, but actually he manages to tell a pretty interesting story around that. He sold Nest to Google for 3.2 billion, I think it was, in 2014, and he eventually left Google. But he now runs an investment firm called Future Shape. So just a little bit of information on him. He's not massively well known. He's not as well known as the likes of Steve Jobs and people like that, obviously, but then who is, to be fair. But this is a worthwhile book. Like I said, I'll start with the bits that I kind of appreciate and I think are useful to you from a personal development point of view. He talks very much about being creative, starting your own business, how you'd run your business, how you'd manage people, very much the human nature side of things, which is really, really important. I've said before that I run my own business with my wife, Health and Social Care. We're essentially kind of consultants, but we provide training as well. He actually talks about consultants and kind of doesn't put them in a particularly great light, which is kind of interesting as well, which is something that I want to quickly talk about. He kind of says that, consultants, these people who come in kind of, telling everyone what to do and then disappear afterwards and things. For me, it's a little bit different in social care because you kind of need those external kind of eyes coming in, the fresh set of eyes to come in and kind of make sure people are kind of doing things right in terms of the way they're respecting people. Because quite often when you're looking after people with learning disabilities and the elderly, you can kind of get used to doing some of the things that you've always done. So sometimes it takes a fresh pair of eyes coming in and saying, no, that's not okay for this and that reason. So consultancy from our point of view does work pretty well. I can see how it wouldn't work quite so well for kind of technology companies and other companies potentially. I think it depends on what your value base is and where you're coming from. When we go in, we're very much kind of concerned with making sure that the people who are supported and cared for get the highest quality care possible, and we're very much no compromise on that. So although it's it's a business to make money like all businesses are, we aren't prepared to compromise on the quality of life, the people's quality of life, or the people who are supported, their quality of life and their kind of outcomes. We're not prepared to kind of compromise on that. So I think from Health and Social Care, consultancy does work, but he makes the point that consultancy isn't really the way forward. And he makes a really important point, which I think is relevant to our own personal development as well, that you can be a consultant, you can be a so-called expert, and you can be telling people how to do things, but essentially you need to at some point go back and get your hands dirty and create something for yourself and run with it and get involved with all the difficult aspects of that rather than just kind of washing your hands and walking away. And I did appreciate that bit of information. He said something really important that really struck me, saying about keeping ideas going until they kind of keep nagging at you, to kind of get an idea about what it is that you actually want, what ideas mean something to you. And I think that's really worthwhile because I'm someone who has lots of different ideas, and sometimes I get passionate about something and then I'll look into it and this and that won't seem quite so good and eventually it'll burn out. Something else might be on the back burner at the back of my mind for quite a long time, for quite a number of years. And he's kind of making the point, keep thinking about these things, keep getting new ideas. And it's the ones that stick around for a long, long time, for a number of years, that are still there niggling at you, that you still feel as though you want to do. They're the ones that are kind of worth pursuing and looking at because you've done kind of the research, you've looked at the negative side and you're still really keen. So I like that piece of advice. He says you can only have one customer, and once you start doing stuff that isn't about that initial customer, once you start drifting away from that, you start trying to please other people like investors and things like that, that's kind of the beginning of the end really for the company. You know, once you forget the people that you started doing the thing for in the first place, then actually that is a downward spiral. I quite like that. He talks about the importance of there being a need for the product that you're coming up with as well. You might be able to build something and make something and show something that looks really good and feels really good, but if it isn't actually filling a need that people have, then it's not going to go anywhere. He talks about how good Steve Jobs was at selling things. He would talk about why people were missing something in their life first of all, before he then came up with a solution and gave it to them. And he was considered to be really smooth and really seamless with that, which I think is really important to think about. He talks about when you're hiring people as well, when you're building a team, how important it is to have that diversity, which we've talked about before on this channel. Not only people from different cultures can bring different ideas and help you see things from different points of view, but different ages of people. So the more experienced kind of 70-year-olds, the people who have been there and seen it before, but then also the younger ones who are kind of a bit more blind to potentially some of the longer term problems. So they're more likely to get stuck into something and just get it done. They're more likely to try and challenge old kind of stale ideas, I suppose, as well. So having that mix of people so they can bounce off each other is really, really important. He's also realistic about that and says that when you grow, which you inevitably should grow, he says that if you're not growing, then you're going to die, basically. You need to keep moving and changing. But he says when you grow, the more people you take on, the more likely you are to come up against problems and more likely you are to have people who aren't necessarily quite as impressive as those first few people that you sort of hired. And it's about kind of accepting that to some degree. You can't control everything. You can't have every single person an amazing 100% what you would want part of your team necessarily, and you kind of have to let go of that to a certain extent. He says not to give too many freebies away, otherwise people get too self-entitled. He talks about, you know, the old school, well, the old idea of people having ownership and feeling as though they've got ownership, people feeling as though they're part of a team that's striving for something meaningful. You know, that idea that they're excited about what's being achieved is really, really important. He also says as well, staying in touch with what real people need, so making sure that you're going out into public, you know what the price of milk is, you get on the subway or the underground, and and you keep in touch with what real people are actually struggling with and what their problems are, rather than allowing yourself to become too successful and too distant from that. It really is a good book. Some of the things I didn't like quite so much, some of it left me a little bit bored. I think sometimes he went into quite a lot of detail, which kind of caused me to close down a little bit, I suppose. I listened to this on Audible, so I was doing other things at the time. Some of it really grabbed me, some of it didn't. I think if it was to be improved, then it could be made a little bit more interesting in places. But then I think, to be fair, the value of what he's saying for some people will be so important that actually you can kind of get over that, really. I'm just talking really more from an entertainment point of view when I say those things. But no, it's a good book. So it's Build, an unorthodox guide to making things worth making by Tony Fadell. So please like and subscribe. I'll be back again soon. Go out, listen to this book, buy it. If you're interested in business and creating something, then it's really worthwhile. Cheers, thank you. Speak soon.